everyone. Thank you, Monica, for the introduction. As you said, my name is Lucia Gonzalez. I was born and raised in Chicago. I'm a Chicago native. I've been teaching for 7 years. I'm entering my 8th year of teaching. Teaching is something that I love, that I enjoy. I especially enjoy it because I get to teach diverse population. My work is with students who have learning needs and with students who are learning a second language. And I absolutely love that. As Monica mentioned, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm still in school. I'm trying to obtain my doctorate at DePaul right now. I'm going part-time, so it's going to take me quite a while, but I really enjoy learning and getting better at what I do. I also got a puppy this summer who's keeping me, when quarantine started, and he's keeping me busy. He's really high energy. So that's been really fun. I hope you guys don't hear him in the background, but I really do apologize if you hear him or if he's still a puppy, so he's learning. But again, I'm really excited to be here and to share some tips that I think will be really helpful to help engage your students in this e-learning process. All right, so I have 3 objectives for today. The first one is to help stakeholders feel at ease about e-learning. I know that this process creates anxiety for everybody involved, teachers, parents, caretakers, everybody that's involved is kind of nervous about the process. And I want you guys to know that it's okay, we're gonna get through it, all of us. So that's my first goal, to hopefully provide some ease around that. By my second goal, providing tips and examples on how you can support these students through the process. And then finally, at the end of the presentation, we should have some time to just, if you guys have questions or concerns, hopefully I can help you guys through some of those questions or concerns. All right, so my first tip, and these are not in any order by most important, but they're just in general tips and things that I suggest. The first tip is to start the year with a positive mindset and framing. This is incredibly important because, as I mentioned, right now, with so much uneasiness going around us, with the pandemic going on and just a lot of different things going on in our world politically, there's just a lot of uncertainty and fear and nervousness, and that's normal. But I do want to encourage us to be positive about this experience with our students, because the more positive we are, our words and our language can really influence the way that they feel and the way that they're taking it in these experiences. So I mean, it's normal to feel nervous and unsure about this whole process. However, just try to frame talking about this experience in ways that are positive, and having a positive mindset is something that we practice daily. It's something that we're not just born being positive or thinking positive thoughts. It's something that we are constantly trying to do and constantly trying to learn. So I just encourage all stakeholders to just have a positive mindset, especially when you're talking about the new school year around students. And again, remember that each day is a new beginning and a new opportunity to have a better day. So maybe the first day isn't so great. Maybe you had some technology issues. Maybe something's going on in the house. So maybe that wasn't your day, but that's okay. We're going to just kind of start each new day and new week with a positive framing, positive mindset. This tip is one that I think is really important. And I know that our households all look different, but I really do encourage providing a specific space for learning for students, whether that is, the kitchen table, or whether that's in the room downstairs or in the basement, wherever that space is. Just make sure that you are providing a unique space where that student knows that this is the place where I go to school, where I go to learn, because that signals to the brain that, again, that they're entering this environment, what they're learning. Allow them to personalize that space, maybe like hang some things up. Right now I'm currently in my dining room, like maybe letting, hanging posters up, or pictures or different things like that will help personalize the space. Staying consistent with the space provided. So like if one day your student says, oh, I'd rather, sit on the couch today, I would encourage you to encourage them, like, no, let's go back to, your learning space, because, we're in school right now, we're learning. And that again signals to them, okay, I'm in school, I'm in a place where I'm learning, and I need to be focused. Another thing is, like, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but ensuring that you take breaks throughout, even within this. Don't take the breaks within this space. So like if your space is at the the corner of your living room, or the corner of a place, make sure that when you are providing your student with a break, that it is in a separate location, just so that they're able, again, to distinguish, this is a space for learning, and this is a space where I take a break, or use my tablet, or play games, or take a snack. So I just encourage you guys to have separate locations for that. And then at the end of the school day, just have them clean up their space or put everything away, so that the next day they're able to come back to that new space and be ready to learn again. The third tip is, sorry, I think I skipped one. Familiarize yourself with the content and the schedule. This part is really, really important. I know that maybe school systems are still trying to figure out what that looks like, but just making sure that you yourself know, how e-learning is going to work for your specific student is really, really important. Because when you familiarize yourself with the schedule, it helps you feel more equipped to support your student and answering their questions about it. Before the start of the school year, understand the schedule. Ask questions if you're not sure. So if they send over an email explaining kind of the logistics of the day and you're kind of confused, make sure you reach out to whoever sent that email, ask them to clarify. And then once you do figure out how that looks for your student, create a personalized schedule with your student that includes brain breaks. So maybe, from 9 to 10, they have to be signed in and have to be in a Zoom call or a Google Meet, but then, allow them like a 10-minute break or a snack break, or, brain break, and then write in the schedule, like after that, then you come back. And so like having that schedule visual for them is something that's gonna be really important as well. So once you familiarize yourself with the schedule, just share it with your student and create like a break schedule for them as well, that they can be involved in the process to help them feel more engaged. All right. So the next one is get involved and ask questions. So again, like asking questions helps you stay involved and up to date on how your student is doing academically and how they're feeling. Again, like when quarter benchmarks come up, grades shouldn't be a surprise. So make sure that you're frequently asking students to share how they did on assignments. If they share that they're going to take a test or they're going to do something or an assignment, ask them, how was your assignment? How did you do on the test? Also, like at the end of the school day, ask students like, how was your day? Or tell me something that you learned today. Is there anything that you need help with? Anything like that. Asking these questions helps you stay involved and helps you stay up to date, but then also, again, creates that line of communication with the student so that they know that, they have that support.
Hi, I have a question from the chat. I think it's about tip number 3.
Yeah.
So Alex Galvan is asking, she's saying, I've heard a lot from parents, is how to know what their student schedule will look like. Do you have any insight in how schools are handling this, or maybe when parents might be expecting them?
Yeah, so I know that every school kind of communicates differently. At our school, we're still working on scheduling. So our students start September 10th, and their schedules are not quite ready yet. So we have not shared that. But I know that once their schedule is ready, we're going to send out emails. We're going to also call stakeholders and let them know like, hey, schedules are up, schedules are ready. My sister actually has students in Indiana, and they're starting tomorrow. And my sister just received their schedule today. So I would also say, like, if you're nervous about it and you feel like you haven't heard from your school, definitely reach out to the school. They're definitely administration office should definitely be open right now, and you could ask them when you can expect a schedule. So that's a really good question. Definitely, like, reach out if you haven't heard anything and school's about to start and you're like, oh, I haven't received any information on that. Definitely reach out to the school, and they should give you some sort of update as to, what is happening, or what the student schedule is going to look like. Okay. Is that the only question, or do we want to ask another question before I continue? Okay. So I'm going to continue with tip number 5. And tip number 5 is one that I find really, really important as well, is just to set goals. Setting goals can help students feel focused and motivated for the new year. Also display those goals. So as I mentioned, like having a space in your room, or having a space in the house, or where they're going to be doing their e-learning and displaying those goals. And these goals can be academic, they can be social goals, they can include class goals, just so that there's somewhere visual where students know, okay, I have a focus for this school year, or for this month, or for this week. Um, and talk about their progress and encourage them. So if their goal is get all A's and B's, ask them like, how's it going, like, how did you do on these assignments, how are you doing towards this goal, and kind of focusing them in on the things that they themselves said they wanted to accomplish this year. I think will also get their mindset straight. And I think sometimes when we think of goals, we think of goals for older students, but that's not the case. Goals can be for any student on any age, starting with preschool, like, hey, what are some, and we change the language around it, but we ask them like, what are some things that you want to learn this year? And having them like tell you those things and writing them down, and just saying, hey, remember that you wanted to learn your ABCs this year, or things like that, and kind of encouraging them is also really helpful. And again, goals help any student, any age. The next goal is providing incentives. So we as adults, we work really well with incentives. Even as adults, we still get encouraged by these. So they definitely work with students. I teach seniors in high school, and I don't know how many times like I've seen them get really excited when they get a sticker. And you would think like, hey, they're high schoolers, like they wouldn't get excited for a sticker. And again, like it just depends on like knowing your students, right? But like incentives help students stay motivated. Again, they can be tailored to meet your own student, what they like, and your own family needs. They can be something as simple as praise, or a sticker, or time outside, piece of candy, additional screen time. And then getting creative, and asking students to choose their incentives. So if you know that your student like it struggles with staying focused for too long, kind of again going back to goal setting those goals, and saying, hey, if you're able to be logged in, or if you have a good day today, like at the end of the day we'll get a piece of candy or a sticker, or you can go outside and play a little longer, or you get 10 more minutes on YouTube, or whatever works for your student, is another really good way to like make sure that they continue to stay motivated. Because again, we're human beings, and we're all like, we all get excited about these incentives, no matter how small they are. So that's another way that you can definitely provide motivation, or kind of motivate somebody that is not as motivated, or is struggling with different aspects of the day. All right. This tip is really, really important. and like most of them are, but this one is one of the most important, I believe. Normalize asking for help. Like, there is nothing wrong with asking for help or not knowing how to do something. I think sometimes, as caretakers or parents or, teachers, we want to try to think that we know everything or know every answer, and that's not the case, and that's okay to not know everything. So like, you as a caretaker or a stakeholder, like, make sure that you're also asking for questions and encouraging your student to ask questions. Like, hey, if you don't know how to do that math problem, it's okay. Like, who can we ask for help? Did you try asking your teacher for help? Did you try asking this person for help? So just kind of encouraging them to ask for help. And then again, if you're not able to help them, I would also encourage you to reach out on behalf of the student and ask for more support if you need that. So if you're really struggling to get your student engaged, or to get your student to do the math work because it's really, really difficult, or to do the reading work because it's really, really difficult, it's okay to struggle through it. Just make sure that you're asking for help. A lot of schools have people that are there to support and to aid if students are struggling. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to that teacher and say, hey, my student's really struggling. If the student's older, again, just encouraging them to reach out for themselves and ask for that help. But don't stay quiet, because if you stay quiet, you get through 2 months or 1 month of this, and your student just gets more lost and more disengaged, and then you don't know what happened, and then they don't want to log in anymore. So from that moment that they have that question, encourage them to ask that question, like, I need more help, I need more support, and ask the school for more support. That is something that should be available for every single student. If you need more help, need more support, please ask for it. All right, and I think that's my dog howling. I apologize. So the next one is, this one might sound a little bit, not silly, but I know that preparing for the new school year is a little bit different this year. Other years, I know students really look forward to getting their back to school stuff, and, going to the stores and buying things, or, things like that. But I will still encourage you guys to do that process with your student. So physically and mentally prepare the student for the new year will ease their mind. Buy or set up supplies from last year, whatever that is. Like, if you're going to go out and buy new supplies, or if you have supplies from last year, like cleaning it up and putting it, in a brand new Ziploc bag, or whatever the case may be, just saying, like, this is your New Year's things, and this is what you're going to use for the year. Talk through, like, preparing for clothes, like, what are we going to wear? And I know that there's different, that people have different opinions about whether students should wear pajamas or uniforms or whatever, and I'll let you guys as caretakers and stakeholders, like, make that decision. But just talking through, like, what are you going to wear, or again, setting these routines, finding and creating that workspace. Again, like, just talking through, like, where is that workspace, where are we going to be learning this year? Let's see, find it. What corner of the house are we going to use, and, like, what chair are you going to use, and kind of doing that. Talk about the upcoming year. Say, like, I'm really excited about you starting 4th grade, or starting your junior year of high school. Like, I'm excited. Like, let's talk about it. What do you think is going to happen this year? Setting bedtimes and wake up times. This is super, super, super important. I think sometimes we think that because it's online, like, oh, like, we're okay with going to sleep a little later. I would definitely suggest to set those bedtimes and wake up times ahead of schedule, and just stay consistent with them, because again, that signals to the students that they're entering a space of learning, and that it's something that's important, and it's important to you, and it's important to them. And so again, having them, choose it, or, you guys choosing that together will definitely help kind of, and help get their motivation up. But then also, like, remember that even if you do have older students or high school students, they need a bedtime too. I think a lot of parents struggle with, knowing whether or not, their 17-year-old needs a bedtime. Yes, I would argue that your 17-year-old should have a bedtime, and be refreshed for the next day, and for the next day of learning. All right, so here is my final tip. And my final tip is to celebrate successes. So what this means is that when students see that you're believing in their success and that you know that they're going to be successful, they just feel encouraged. You want to be your students' greatest cheerleader. You want to make sure that they know that you believe in them, that you are so proud of them, that you're looking at what they're doing, that you're celebrating their success. Tell other people how great your student is doing, or a challenge that they've overcome. Like, talk about it with other people. If you're on the phone with, your whoever you're on the phone with, just say, hey, I just wanted to tell you how, Lucy did. She did so well today. She was really frustrated with a math problem and she got through it and it was awesome. Or, I want to tell you how well Lucy did. She asked for help today. And when they hear, sometimes as parents we're like, oh, they're not even listening to us, but like kids are hearing everything we're saying. And if they hear you talking negatively about them, that impacts them. But then when that impacts them, but if they hear you talking positively, that impacts them even more, and they feel more just encouraged. Again, using that positive language and reassuring them daily, celebrating daily, and just kind of, being sure that you are noticing those small things and those things that they are doing. And then finally, we have a lot of time for questions. So if you guys have questions, or if you'd like me to go through a slide again, whatever the case may be, please let me know.
You're welcome to type the questions in the chat, and I'm happy to read them off, or I'm happy to unmute people as well.
I have a quick question. So I know we were talking about the schedules already, but are teachers going to be sending out like weekly schedules, or like just sending out like emails that are like, hey, this week we're focusing on XYZ? Like, are those going to be sent out as well?
That's a really great question, and I think again it depends on your school and the way that they communicate, right? I know, for example, for our schools, we definitely send out a weekly blast with like that's tailored to that grade level, and just saying like, this is the things that we're working on. Here are the links that are important, and kind of sharing that information weekly. But again, it just depends. And I will encourage, again, you guys to just reach out if you're not receiving any emails or you feel completely lost in the process. Like, call the office, call the school, and say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe you have my email incorrect, or maybe my phone number's incorrect. Can I know, how we're going to be receiving information? And just having clarity around that is really going to be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it just sounds like the most important thing is communication with teachers during this time.
Yeah, I have a question. So something that our organization does is we provide academic enrichment for students experiencing homelessness. And something that we've kind of been thinking about is like how to include, an academically enriching activity in a way that doesn't overwhelm students who are already having to sit at their computer for X amount of hours. Do you have any like tips or advice for folks who are thinking about like how to create activities that supplement and support learning, but that don't overwhelm students?
Yeah, so I think that the more you can get students to be hands-on with an activity, so I'm not sure, does your organization do person to person? Are they going to be working directly with students, or is it going to be online as well? That's my first question.
Yeah, so we're not sure yet. Some of our shelter partners have said that they would like virtual engagement. Some have said that they're open to the possibility of in-person, so it really varies.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, but just you talk about now overwhelming students. I think that again, just being as hands-on as possible, having activities that allow students to work with their hands, use manipulatives, get up and find things, or do things, even if you are in a Zoom call, like just having activities where, again, they can get up and use different things around the house, and that they're not so focused just sitting on the computer, and making sure that you are engaging every student. So like knowing your students, if you are doing an outside like if you are an after school organization, just making sure that just the same exact way that you get to know your students during the school year, you do the exact same thing online, by like asking questions and sharing and doing those activities that you normally do in person.
Cool. I actually had one more question. So as an educator, what would you say that like you learned from the first round of e-learning that you'll be taking with you into this next school year?
That is a really good question. So one of the things that I learned during the first round is that students feel really overwhelmed with it, just as much as like adults do. So there are times where like students are like, this is so much, like they kind of shut down, and they like will avoid your calls or your messages or things like that. And one of the things that I'm learning for this new time around is like, again, just being really positive about the experience. If you have a student that's not responding to you, or maybe he's not turning in work, approaching it in a different way, like, hey, I hope everything's okay, and maybe not bringing up work the first conversation that you have. I found that was really helpful. I had a few students who just felt so overwhelmed that they like would not respond to any of my emails where I was like, hey, you need to do this, X, Y, and Z. But then when I would, write on the subject box, like, call me, right? And with an exclamation point, then they would open the message. I would like write something like, hey, I hope everything's okay. Like, I'm just wondering how you're doing. And then I would connect with the student and then help them through that. But again, like the students are feeling overwhelmed as well. So just trying to ease that, taking it step by step and being really positive with them is something that I'm going to definitely use as an educator this time around.
A question in our chat box. Emily says, how would you recommend encouraging parents to be involved in their children's remote learning, especially for
Yeah, that is a really great question. I definitely think that, the way to approach parents is as unique as the way you approach students. For example, I have parents that I make contact with about 8 times a year. And, if I call them, they're not going to answer, because they'd rather be, informed through a text message, or they talk through email. Like, just I guess my first suggestion is just like, find out what that parent's best mode of communication is. Like, if they prefer receiving text messages, like find that information out in the beginning, because you never know, like they might want to be involved, but maybe they work a night shift, or maybe they're not available in the morning, or maybe they aren't available to like help students through the e-learning process like directly. But that doesn't like necessarily mean that they don't want to get involved. So definitely like get to know the parents, maybe send out a survey or ask like, like, how would you like to stay updated on how your student is doing? And like learning that method was definitely going to help with that build that communication gap, or like help them feel like they're more involved in what's happening with the student, if that makes sense. So as a teacher, like I want to make sure that if when I'm connecting with parents that I, again, I'm talking about the positive things that I see that their student is doing before I go into like, hey, your student hasn't turned in X, Y, and Z. Or, also asking like, hey, how are you doing? How is this process going for you? Do you need help with anything? Is there anything that I can do to support, and kind of opening it that way? Or like, what do you need help with? Because a lot of times there is fear behind it, fear of like not knowing how to help students, or again, there's work that's involved, or like there's no time. But definitely like make sure you're having those conversations with parents, to learn more about them and learn about what works for them and their family.
Hello, I actually don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment. My name's Andriana, by the way. Your tip about just distinguishing the work area and as well as a break time area was just very helpful, not only in terms of students, but for someone who is just starting to work virtually. I realize how important that is. And so seeing that we're going to have students uh, do that as well, we really need to emphasize, taking like a mental break. And even if you have to just go to a different area to just get your mind set in a different place to relax, I definitely think that was a great idea. So thank you for sharing that. And I will definitely be taking that advice for myself as well. Thank you so much.
No problem. I learned that my first round as well. So I was doing work in the current area where I am, and this is fine, but I'm right by the door. I'm right by the kitchen. I'm right by the TV. Like that is not like I'm in a place where I'm like so distracted. So now I know that I need to go to an area that's a little bit more secluded. So I've created that space for myself, and like now I'm going to be working from that space, and that's going to be the space that I work with. I'm just to just make sure my mind is focused.
Yeah, kind of going off that. So, our organization works with a lot of families experiencing homelessness and living in shelters. And so sometimes the different rooms are not an option. So I was wondering if you had any advice for like how to still create that sense of like ownership of like, oh, this is my workspace, or that mindset of like, when I do this, this means I'm doing school, maybe in like a very limited space.
Absolutely. I think like students are so creative themselves, and like create forts and create different things, and like make the best use of space that like we as adults don't often like see that. So again, we're going to be working with what we have, right? So asking the student themselves like, hey, this is the area that we have, like this is a room that we have, which part of this room do you want to utilize? And like just moving that, even if it's just like moving a chair that way, or setting up a blanket, or maybe not a blanket because that might signal sleep, but like setting something up that like signals this is like my work corner, whether that's the corner, like ask them, like have them be involved in that process, like here is the space that we have, this room, or or this area, what area do you want to take to be your e-learning space, and have them choose that, and have them decorate it, have them put stickers, or maybe not stickers, but just have them put their things in there that they, their pencils, or organize those things, and they'll find that space and be really creative with it. Even if it is just like a limited, part of the house, or limited part of the location, they'll find a place for themselves.
Hello, can you hear me? Great. So I have a question on how we can kind of help, because a lot of this also depends on the parents. So how we can help the parents with this burden of transitioning to e-learning, because physically we won't have as much contact with students compared to them. So how can we be a better resource with setting up, like what you're talking about with setting up a room or a space or an area, so that way it's not overwhelming to parents, like, oh, if I don't get this done, like my kid's not going to learn well, or if I don't have the resources for that, my kid's not going to succeed. So how can we kind of help parents with that burden?
That's a really great question. I think first and foremost, like asking what do you need, asking parents like what do you need to make this process like successful, or what are you feeling unsure about. And so if a parent, for example, says, well, I feel uneasy because I can't answer a lot of the academic questions, or my student is, in 12th grade and I don't know 12th grade math, or whatever the case may be, just reassuring them that there are support systems within the school. So like for that example, like for the example of like not actually knowing the content or being afraid of like not knowing the content, there's always like making sure you're encouraging them to talk to somebody at their school. If they don't know the language, making sure that they're advocating for somebody that does speak the language to communicate with the parents. That's really, really important. And I find that a lot with my parents that speak a second language, that sometimes they don't know that these supports are available, and like it is their right to ask for support in their home language, or to ask support for their student in that's struggling. So again, encouraging them to reach out to the school. Or for example, if the parent says, I don't have a computer or I don't have access to internet, again, those are things that the school needs to provide supports for. Or even, or if maybe the concern is like, I don't have supplies. Again, like all of these concerns can definitely be shared with the school system themselves, and there are definitely supports out there. Sometimes that gets lost in communication, but a lot of times like the fears or the concerns of parents can, be easily fixed with a call to the school and just kind of letting them know what's needed. Because there are a ton of resources coming from schools, but we just need to make sure that we are directing them to the right people to get those resources.
And then to bounce off that, I don't know if that's already been answered or not, because I've been having technical difficulties, but so as a nonprofit, we're a resource, so how can we kind of work with schools to be that middle of communication for some of our parents, or to just help alleviate with that burden?
That is such a great question. And I think, again, because you are representing the student and that family, like you can 100% call the school and like request to speak to somebody on behalf of that student. You again, like as the person that's kind of supporting, you can call and say like, hey, I have so and so's mom with me, and we wanted to know, or on the phone, or do a three-way and say, we wanted to know, like they've been struggling with their math and they don't really know, so we're wondering if you have any tutor support or any additional support that you can provide them. You can 100% do that as a supporting agency, like be that phone call for them or help them through that phone call, because a lot of times that phone call can be really scary for parents. Be like that initial call, like, I don't know what to ask, or I'm afraid to ask, or what if I sound silly? And it's like, no, you're not going to sound silly. But if you need someone to help guide you through that phone call, like that is one of the biggest steps that you guys as an organization can do, by like advocating and supporting those families and calling on behalf of them. Absolutely.
I have a question. One of the things that was kind of left up in the air when we started remote learning in the spring was how grades were going to be processed. Do you have any more insight into how grading has changed, and if there's any different guidance for grading starting for the fall?
Absolutely. So I'm going to speak only with my knowledge of like CPS, because we work within that, within that organization. But in the when remote learning first started, it was quote unquote optional. Not optional in the sense, like it was highly encouraged, but we could not penalize students for not turning work in, so their grades could only improve. However, that for this time around, what I know from like the guidelines that have been given to us is that that is no longer the case, because we are making sure that students have access to computers and to internet and things like that. We are counting attendance in different ways. Again, like the grading policy really much varies by school, right? But I do know that, you know, they're going, like, grades are going to be put in and missed grades are going to be put in. So that's very much going to affect and fluctuate based on, you know, how students are doing. Versus when it first started, whatever the student did only helped their grade, it didn't hurt their grade.
I have another question. So more so on like the social emotional learning side for our younger students, especially kids going into first and second grade, what are some great resources or ways to kind of adapt that to give to parents so that way children are still not necessarily meeting in groups, but can still have outside activities and still kind of get that outside and kind of social gathering, but not gathering, but like going to a park or something. Like, you get what I'm asking? Like, how can we better adapt those resources to like the current situation? So instead of like field trips and stuff, like how can we better adapt those for what's going on now?
That is a really good question. So I think that, you know, again, like it's harder for different students or for families to like go on field trips, or that might not be a possibility, but it is a possibility to go outside and spend some time outside, and you know, have you know, whether that day, you know, maybe for the younger kids who have like a shorter attention span, it's perhaps like taking the day or taking one of the Zoom calls outside, right? And like letting them experience like being outside and like learning in that environment, or, you know, taking the picnic or a table, or, you know, whatever the case may be, and having them have lunch out there. But like exposing like the younger kids to like different areas and different experiences, even within your realm of like your realm of environment. So like, again, if your environment is, you know, your home and you're not leaving your home, it's maybe doing something in front of your house, or exposing them to different environments within your house for different situations, I think will help with their interest and will help with like them not connecting as much with students. Another thing that I suggest is like, even for the younger kids, like setting up Zoom meetings or like some sort of like Google meetings with their friends, this outside of like the school, like the actual school, like it doesn't have to be part of the school day. This can be like, hey, let's set up a play date with, or like, let's set up some time for you to play with your best friend, you know, and on the computer. And so then, you know, having those times where they can connect with each other and just talk about whatever they want to talk about during that screen, or during that Zoom call, or during that Google Meet time, and saying like, hey, you know, if you're missing your friend, like you can still see them through the computer, or things like that. I think is another great way to like make sure that they're still getting that social contact with friends or with people that they miss.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from this, so thank you for presenting and stuff.
No problem. Thank you.
Does anybody have any final questions?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. I'm Dara with the Insight Project for kids. I just wanted to ask, like one thing I was thinking would be kind of cool would be to make recipes from home, but of course that could be a disaster. So I was coming up with like ice cube recipes, like to, pour some juice into an ice cube tray or something. Are there any like books or anything about like how to make, say, like most people, whether they have money or don't have money, or if they're homeless or whatever, if there's something they can do that's creative, that's not like, like, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that, we can't do this, we can't do that. Is there any like books or resources where there are things that kind of everybody would have to be creative with for either cooking or making something?
Chanel put in the chat that she's been leading origami lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And that she finds the tutorials on YouTube, and you don't need like any of the special paper. You can just use like construction or printer or recycle it if it's, a letter or something like that.
Nice. Thank you.
Another thing that I will add is like YouTube literally has so many resources and so many things. So when I'm cooking and I don't have a specific ingredients, or even like Google, I will Google like, what can I use instead of this? So back to your example about like the ice cubes, like maybe a student may not have the actual ice cube thing, but like you can ask them like, like, is there a cup you can use, or like a small container, that you can use to pour that liquid in there, and they themselves will get creative, or definitely like use Google as your resource to like say like, if I don't have this ingredient, what can I use instead of it? And there's always a substitution and a substitution for a substitution. So yeah, I would just encourage you like not to be afraid to like create recipes and do things with the students. Just again, like get creative with them, get just as creative, and let's figure out what you do have. And so take it from like a half full glass, like a glass half full kind of mind,
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much for your questions and the great conversation that's happening. Does anyone have any last questions? This will be shared out in an email to our participants, and happy to share the presentation and the tips, and we're all kind of learning about e-work and e-learning, so definitely want to be continuing to share those resources. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, Lucia, and thank you to everyone who attended today. We've got more opportunities to get involved throughout the rest of the week and have different conversations. So thank you for coming this evening. This year, our call to action is to donate to our snack drive. Each semester, during our after-school program, whether it's in person or virtually, Chicago Hopes for Kids is committed to working with our students to ensure that they continue to succeed. Your donation will help provide snacks to children at 9 shelters throughout Chicago. To get involved, please go to chicagahopesforkids.org or visit our Amazon wish list. It'll be in the note right afterwards. Thank you for your participation, and look out for a feedback survey after this. Monica says, if you can, please join us for our other sessions this week. So I know she and the whole team at Chicago Hopes worked really hard to put this together. We really appreciate you participating and being a part of this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Lucy, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. You're the best, great information, and we'll see you all hopefully in our next session.
And have a great start to your school year.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to learn more about Chicago Hopes for Kids and the services we provide, visit chicagohopesforkids.org.